Hello and happy new year, friends, or welcome if you're new here and have impeccable taste for stumbling onto this masterpiece of a video. I'm Cherokee, and today we're diving into one of my favorite topics, music. Even though we have rung in the new year, I'm personally considering it just a continuation of December, and since I have zero interest in making a new year resolution or a vision board, I thought, why not look back at all my favorite music of the year instead? So, with that said, these albums that I did choose are the ones that kept me sane or at least distracted me from spiraling into existential dread. You know, the usual. And yes, before anyone says it, I'm fully prepared to defend my picks against the haters, so just bring it on in the comments, alright? Also, if your favorite album didn't make this list, don't take it personally. It's probably just because I have better taste. Kidding! Mostly. But seriously, drop me your favorite record in the comments. I'm always on the hunt for new music, and I'd love to hear what you think. So, whether you're here for some new recommendations or just want to see if your faves made the list, grab a snack, get cozy, and let's talk albums. Oh, excuse me. Share here and post just came by with a couple of notes real fast. So, one is this list isn't in any particular order. They're just my favorite albums that stuck with me that were in rotation a lot. My music taste tends to change from day to day depending on what my mood is. And the second thing was I did not include any deluxe albums or mixtapes on this, so I'm so sorry to Victoria Monet, Meg The Stallion, and Doechii. They will not be featured on this list, but you should go still stream those albums because they were really good projects. All right, back to the countdown. 2024 has been an amazing year for music, but I'll be honest, the last few years of music haven't been very exciting to me. I've checked out projects here and there, but for the most part, I've been pretty tapped out. And I'll be honest, a lot of the stuff that has been coming out has just been making me feel old. I just have not been vibing with the current stuff that has been coming out. This also extends itself to hip hop. I've been into hip hop since I was a kid, and I have vivid memories of playing in my mom's CD collection and plugging headphones in when people still had full-on stereo systems in their houses. I think it's fair to say I'm not the target audience anymore, so I felt aged out of it, and I've been primarily paying attention more to the female side of rap and kind of on the lookout for more of the classic sound. I've been on a mission to seek out the classic sound of hip hop that I feel is so desperately missing, because I recognize that the issue isn't that there isn't good music being made in any genre. It's just a matter of that may not be what is being pushed to the forefront. Due to that, I've kind of been on a journey of like checking out more artists specifically who fall into the boom bap bag, and we'll circle back to that later. But if you've been paying attention to pop culture at all this year, then you know the infamous feud that has happened between two of the biggest artists of the genre in the decade. I don't know where you've been, but maybe it's for the best. So yeah, Not Like Us was a total bop, but it wasn't featured on an album. So why are we talking about this? Oh yeah, he dropped an album. I'm gonna be honest, I've never listened to a Kendrick Lamar project in full before this. I know, wait. I've never listened to a Kendrick Lamar project in full before GNX. Wait, hold on. I'm working on it. I get it. Your anger is justified. But I have a good reason. If I'm being honest, I've loved hip hop since I was a kid and have definitely gotten into my boom bag era as of late, but when it comes to the male artists in the genre, I've kind of tuned them out because a lot of it I just haven't been into. It makes me feel super old, and I really can't distinguish between who and what I'm listening to, and just understood like that's not for me. And like I said earlier, I listen to different types of music based on my mood, so a lot of the stuff that has been coming out just doesn't feel relatable. To be fair though, that doesn't mean I'm writing the genre off as a whole. I just recognize a lot of the popular stuff that comes out is not for me. For the record, I don't like Voldemort's music very much either. Just before anyone starts that conversation, I've always known the power of Mr. Lamar's pen, but I wasn't sure if his music was for me. I've of course known he's gained many followers and accolades and awards based off the power of his pen, but I wasn't quite sure if his projects were for me. See, I love storytelling, and I love a good concept album that is well executed, but I was kind of concerned that it was going to be a project that was told from a very male-centered perspective and a very traditional like approach to how they talk about women. I know, but I'm not a kid anymore. I'm a 31-year-old woman listening to hip hop, and how I take in lyrics has changed drastically since my youth. Just being honest. But I took a risk because I loved Not Like Us. GNX was this really popular thing, and I kind of wanted to be a part of that to just see if it was anything to write home about. Plus, they already had snippets on TikTok, and that drew me in, so I went ahead and just listened to the full project. GNX has shown me how truly wrong I was and how I've been missing out. He's not only an artist, but he's also a musician, and I think both of those terms get thrown around loosely, but it's clear that he's both. And this was true to form. He has given me what I've been missing in music, which is a concept and a thorough execution. It's clearly a love letter not only to the West Coast and to black culture, but to the art of hip-hop itself and his predecessors. Channeling the likes of Nas, Pac, and even Eminem. Am I the only one that felt like whacked out murals had a tinge of Slim Shady in it? It was everything from how the samples were used on Luther to Squabble Up, the imagery painted with his pen on Heart Part 6, which that SWV sample of Use Your Heart is just so... And honestly, I think I'm who this album is for. A cultural reset was very much needed, and who better to do it? I understand the vision, and I'm back on the ride. This album has been in rotation in my car, at work, me cleaning the house, out on my jogs, everything. And I can't wait to see Dodger Blue performed. I'll see you May 9th. Remember how I mentioned I was really big into pop? Well, that goes into this. I've been late to the group of Flow. I've watched their clips when they've come across my timeline, but nothing I heard made me want to go to my Spotify and add it to my like songs. That's not to say I didn't see their potential. I personally love the idea of a resurgence for girl and boy groups. I feel like they are what shaped the early era in early to mid 2000s, and it's how we got K-pop. Fight with your mama. I will not be dissecting it more. I've been kind of late to the group that is Flow. I watched their clips when they've come across my timeline, but I hadn't heard any songs that made me want to pull it up on my Spotify. That's not to say I didn't see the potential. I personally love the idea of a resurgence of girl and boy groups, and as a Y2K pop stan, that was some of the best visuals and music we were getting in pop music, especially amongst the black groups. And it's the reason we have K-pop today. Fight with your mama, I said what I said. I honestly don't know what made me stop and check out the album, but I was glad that I did. I listened to it in full and saved, I believe, almost all of the tracks. It is very the writings on the wall by DC coded in the best way, from the production, the beat choices to the vocal arrangements, without the deep-seated drama or the skippable tracks. This album is giving me nostalgia vibes in the best way, and it makes me want to put on a halter top, a mini skirt, and some knee-high boots and go clubbing. It's clear that they are directly influenced by the black girl groups of the early 2000s, such as Destiny's Child, 702, SWV, and Black, just to name a couple. And I think they're pulling it off very well. See, I saw the clips of people being really harsh on them about their vocals and how they're not really feeling it and they don't know if it was going to work. But that's just because people on the internet are mean. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. But this album, they took all of that criticism and they put it into a wonderful project. I think I want to go see them live, but the closest they're coming is Brooklyn, and I do not feel like driving 3 hours. But maybe I'll catch you on the next tour. Either way, I'm a fan, and I'll be patiently awaiting the next project. Congrats, ladies. The next album up on this list is Empathogen by Willow. I've had my ear perked to Willow and her music since Whip My Hair days. Not sure why we treat that song like it was so embarrassing. She was literally 11 and it was age appropriate. But anyways, I loved the music she transitioned to as adult Willow, teen into adult Willow, who was a punk rock girly and paying homage to her mother, who also was previously in a metal band. If you didn't know that, you should go check that out. But also as an black alt girly myself, who is still a black alt girly in adulthood, I was elated to see another girl who looked like me and black girls of her era having representation. So fast forward to the release of the single of Symptom of Life. I'd already been listening to Willow pretty recently, which is why I think it showed up in my recommended, and I ended up loving the track immediately. And I was definitely piqued to find out what the new album was gonna sound like. The single of Symptom of Life to me sounded like Japanese style jazz. That's the best way I could describe it. But for whatever reason, I blinked on its release date. Until I was watching HT Hayes review it. The clips he was playing made me immediately stop and go over to Spotify myself and check the album out, and I was so glad that I did. It was worth it. Like, from the composition to the lyrics, it's so clear that she takes her art very seriously. I love her songwriting, and I love how she uses her voice as an instrument in the song rather than her voice being something that gets layered on top of the music, if that makes sense. And can you believe this is her 6th album already and she's only 24? So this album is a bit of a departure from her previous sound, as it is a jazz fusion and a bit of a like prog rock. But as a fan of music, I loved every moment of it. I would have loved to see her and Childish Gambino when they came to town, but alas, it was out of my price range. But I am looking forward to whatever releases she makes in the future. Oh, and if you haven't, you should definitely go check out the deluxe version of this album as well. It's amazing. The last full release we got from Kaytranada was his collab album with Amine, which I actually enjoyed. It gave me the feeling of a party in a tropical destination, which I lived for, while this album, Timeless, was a return to traditional Kaytranada form. They both sound like Kaytranada, but this one's more of like in the bag we anticipate. You know what I'm saying? He has a way of making his music kind of sound like we're on a completely different planet in a separate universe altogether, and all the people he features fit perfectly into his universe. Something I would honestly love to see him do is pull artists of yesteryear onto his projects that come from that era of sound, because there's something very current yet nostalgic that he encapsulates in dance music that I can't quite explain, but it scratches my brain in the best way possible. Think about it. You don't think 702 Eat Down on a Kaytranada beat? SWV? Janet Jackson? There's something about his production that feels so shiny and nostalgic that I live for. Timeless was no exception. And I'm ashamed to say that I've bought tickets to see that man's show twice in the past and missed both. I would have lived to see this set live, and I know it's not gonna hit the same because now he's big and he's in arenas, because the time I bought tickets I would have went to see him at the House of Blues, but one was a really big snowstorm and the second time was the pandemic and the show got canceled. So it wasn't my fault, I promise. But I saw y'all's TikToks. Congratulations! Also, if you haven't heard Kaytranada's edit of Assumptions by Sam Gellaitry, you should go fix that. You should fix that right now. Pause this video. Go listen to it. Alright, next up is Short and Sweet by Sabrina Carpenter. I'm just gonna come out and say it. I think this was my favorite pop album of the year. I kept hearing the name Sabrina Carpenter for a while, but I've long since grown out of my Disney era, and I barely remember the show that was Girl Meets World because I was a hater. Honestly, again, crusty 90s kid, do not like remakes. And since I have not joined the Olivia Rodrigo train, I vaguely remember this Sabrina girl being mentioned in tandem with Olivia, but it never caught on, and again felt like this is way out of my range here. So then I heard Talking Nonsense, and my interest was piqued, but I was convinced it was kind of a one-off. You know, some starlet once in a blue moon writes a really catchy pop tune that connects with more people, but in the end, you're probably not their target audience. And then in walks Espresso, Y'all, I tried my hardest to avoid that song. I thought it was Ariana Grande for whatever reason, and then I went to the mall and they got me. They got me good. By then, Please 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 was out, and I was like, that's cute, but it's not for me. It had like a country twang, very reminiscent of the 90s country pop era. Don't hate it. It just wasn't something I was in love with. But for the life of me, I couldn't escape it. And after a friend, a much younger one, told me to check it out, I said, fuck it, and put it on in the background while I took a shower. I want to apologize to Miss Sabrina and all her fans. Y'all were right. I anticipated having to skip something at some point, and it just didn't come. I listened to the whole project twice. The concept, the pacing, the clever songwriting, the melodies, perfection. It gives a sexy summer vibe where all your fragrances are fruit scented with big hair and lots of lip gloss, and honestly, I live for that. Thank you so much, Sabrina. I'm sorry I ever doubted you. Next up, we've got Mutt by Leon Thomas. So, like Sabrina Carpenter, I knew of Leon Thomas from the last years of watching the kiddie channels. In this case, it was Nickelodeon. I was a fan of Victorious not for the plot, but solely for the music, if I'm being honest. As we all know, Ariana Grande went on to become the breakout star of that show. And if you watched Insecure, then you recognized Leon as Issa's neighbor, much younger neighbors that she hooked up with. But Leon has always been in the background primarily as a writer. I'm not kidding. Go look up his song credits. He's already a Grammy winner. So when it came time to drop this project, I expected a fantastic body of work, and it gave exactly what I thought it would. A melodic and catchy body of work over R&B instrumentals that have like bass, like bass driven music. Like when we say hip hop and R&B, I think he's actually cultivating a really good clash of those two. There's something very 90s Mary J. Blige, like we recorded this in a basement kind of feel that I really, really, really enjoy about his work. Also, he has a really beautiful voice. It works. Like the way he rides and glides over all the tracks of choices are really good. Oh, by the way, I was late to the game, but you should also go check out Electric Dusk when you have a moment, which was the album that came out before this one. Remember earlier how I said that I was going back into artists and projects of like previous times to get remember when I said earlier that I was kind of getting into my boom back bag, and I was diving into other artists to kind of fulfill that need, which meant that have made a profound impact in hip hop. Someone who did drop this year that I did get to check out their project was The Alchemist, who released The Genuine Articulate. I recognize that I don't even dislike modern current hip hop. I just tend actually not to like the rappers. I love current production. I love the beats. I love everything about it. But the rappers themselves, I tend to lose interest very quickly. I might like a song or two, but in terms of actually saving and following artists, male rap artists these days, that's not really a thing. So I figured, why not go back in time to see what the people of who are still working, who are not worried about being radio friendly, who are still releasing projects, are coming up with. So I'm not salty. I know I'm not the target audience. I also believe some music just has a time and place, and if I'm being honest, a lot of the radio friendly stuff that the kids listen to doesn't really move me to listen to it on a daily basis, because it requires a lot of energy that I just don't always have. So in an effort to provide the respect the genre that it to the excuse me in order to provide respect to the genre that it deserves, I went in search of some producers and lyricists that have made a name for themselves and their style lends itself to the 90s whole I was kind of looking to find. And who else better to do that than the Alchemist himself? And I say it 90s and 2000s because I was listening to a lot of stuff from my MTV era. It was a lot of Linkin Park this year, a lot of Limp Bizkit, a lot of Daft Punk, just anything you were probably gonna hear getting ready for school in the mornings. That was on my that was top Spotify stuff. But anyways, if you've been listening to hip hop, then you already know who the Alchemist is. If you haven't, then let me give a brief introduction. He is considered a legendary rapper and producer in the sport, in the genre, in the culture that is hip hop. And he released a new album. So I went in and decided to go give it a listen. And bring back short albums. Good God Almighty, why are we doing albums that are like 12 tracks or more? It's not necessary. I got everything that I needed in that short span of perfect tight features, tight production. We got some beautiful storytelling about where he is in his life now because he's a father, an established man, how things have changed, where he is in his life. And I got my life. And I saved it. And I've been listening to it. It's perfect in the background. I'm not overstimulated. I can still tap back in and pick up the stories that he's putting down. Or I can just let it fade into the back and just enjoy the production for what it is. Side note, this also is a sign, Andre 3 Stacks. We want to hear your projects. I don't know what you're doing. You're probably still here playing the flute, but you really could rap. Read happily. Listen in. Tune in. I want to hear about that colonoscopy. I want to hear about fatherhood. Okay? I want to hear about doing your taxes. You should. The next album up is Yseult Touchdown. How Do You Sleep at Night? So, I feel like everybody knows of Yseult, but I don't know how many people know of Yseult. Because if you've been paying attention and if you have been listening to both R&B, pop, house, rap, if you looked somewhere for that man, you found him on someone's project this year for sure. Yseult Touchdown has been that guy, and I'm so glad to see him on the come up because I've been following him since he was making videos back in the yard. And he's such an eclectic little weirdo, and I live for every moment of it. And I think How Do You Sleep at Night is a great introductory project to that. It's something so like sincere and carefree and fun about it that I just really enjoyed. And I'm really sad that I did not get to see him live. Those Tyler the Creator tickets were hella expensive, and when he went on tour by himself, I was a broke bitch. The song that he's featured on with Don Toliver, Luckily We're Having Fun, is one of my favorite songs of this year. That song stayed on rotation in my car. I'm looking forward to whatever that man drops. I know that he said he's gone away to go work on a project, and I hope that is so. I hope we get a full release. I hope they don't tire him out, because he was on a Drake project. He worked with Kendrick. He worked with Don Toliver. He's been working with Lil Yachty. They just been having my boy out here. So I'm looking forward to whatever project he releases next. Next up, we've got Algorithm by Lucky Daye. So checking this album out was a no-brainer for me, as Candy Drip was one of my favorite albums of 2022, and I've been following Lucky Daye since the release of his album Painted. Each one of the singles for this album were already pulling me in to find out what the final project would sound like, and he did not disappoint me. I watched an interview of him with Scotty Beam talking about how this album basically was him asking himself, what would R&B sound like if we stripped away the conversation around color? And after a listen, I can see exactly what he was going for. He lists artists like George Michael, Queen, Toto, Journey, Lenny Kravitz, Bee Gees, and of course Prince as inspiration for this album. And I can hear it. If you love music, you're going to love this album. It features Lucky's brilliant songwriting, as always, and he's crying over lost love like the times before, but with a bit of an edgier sound than we've heard previously. And I also think he pushed himself vocally in a way we haven't heard yet, and the risk was very much worth the reward. There's also some really fun, like, production stuff happening. I think if you've ever listened to a Lucky Daye project previously, you know that interludes and like voice changes are very like integral to his signature sound. We got like groovy Lucky on this album, I think a little bit more. Think Late Night, okay? That's one of my favorite Lucky Daye songs of all time. Also, I'm so sad that I did not get to see him on this tour run, because I have seen him during the Candy Drip era, and It's a 10 out of 10. If you haven't done it yet, make some time, go do it. I absolutely recommend it. And I think that is where I'm going to wrap up this list. But I do have some honorable mentions that I want to bring up real fast. So just to be clear, these albums were, the following albums I'm going to list were very good. I just discovered them probably too late in the year to give them a fair shot on this list, but are definitely still going to be in my rotation, and you should totally check out if you haven't. So the first one is Beyonce's Cowboy Carter. It was great, but I personally really did like Renaissance more. I definitely saved a couple tracks and will be playing them in the background. I hated all the singles that was released from this particular album run. Best track off that album, well, my favorite, I should say, not the best. My favorite track in terms of collabs on that album is Shotgun Rider featuring Miley Cyrus, and Desert Eagle is also another of my faves. I also love Yaya, and there's one more on there I'm forgetting, but those are the ones I can think of off the top of my head. Caroline Polachek, Desire I Want to Turn Into You. Good, solid pop album. John Dawson, Glimmer of God. If you haven't been checking out John Dawson, you really, really should. Like, Glimmer of God, I'm willing to put an asterisk next to that album because it was immaculate. Like, the combination of sounds and the way they tie so well together, and he just lives and exists in each album without sounding discombobulated or him trying to pretend to be anyone else, was amazing. I'm going to mispronounce this next person's name because she's French. Yseult? Yseult. Sorry, apologies in advance. But the album Mental, she's doing what I wanted from the other girls that are doing the dub step slash the electronica dance, like pop stuff that the UK girlies are dropping. This was the album for that. This album, it gave that in the way that I was looking for, without it sounding like she was borrowing from the sound and just putting on a style pack and it looked cool. This gave me what I needed. Allie X, Girl with No Face. I've been following Allie X for a couple of years, and it's actually kind of a crime that she's not bigger. It seems that she might have made a breakthrough with the song Galena. But you should go check her out. If you like Gaga as a little monster, well, a monster, we're capital, we're big kids now. You should go check that out. You would love that. And last, but certainly not least, we have Rachel Chinouriri. What a devastating turn of events. Remember when I said earlier about black representation in like the pop alt black for black girls in the pop alt scene? Rachel's that girl. The UK girly understands it. You should go check that out if you haven't. She is 100% that bitch. Loved every minute of it. She's gorgeous. I love her voice. I love her songwriting. The album itself sounds like it's stepped out of my favorite angsty drama. It's so good. It's so good. Go check it out. I know that wasn't 10, but these were the best albums for me, mentally, emotionally, this year, that have stayed in rotation and just brought me all the feels and the good vibes that I needed at any given moment when I wasn't dipping into the music of my youth and being like a curmudgeonous old person. Yeah, so I'll catch you in the next one. See you, Space Cowboy.